quickly or there will be trouble.
Of course, machines can't think as people do. The machine is different. That's it.
So it's very tempting with the big screen here to show you some slides, but it's been pointed out to me that that PowerPoint is neither powerful nor on the point. So I will instead provide I also don't want to ruin the story. I know some of you have not seen it, and I met some of the people I've met tonight. I will inevitably I will say something that will bear upon it in these opening comments, but I've pretty carefully avoided spoilers, and we can talk about that afterwards. For example, you will learn why we shake hands. I've shaken hands quite a bit today, but I was surprised how enthusiastic people were to shake my hands considering the topic tonight. So first I want to introduce my laboratory here. In case you have questions, raise your hands there so everybody knows where you are. So if you have, it's not quite my entire laboratory. I'm sorry to embarrass you if I did, but we're happy to have them. It's really terrific. We've got a great community here at the Coolidge and my laboratory as well. I should point out that my laboratory is also grateful to the Sloan Foundation. They have helped us fund a nonprofit part of the laboratory called personalgenomes.org, which makes an effort to get open science, citizen science engagement throughout the world now. It's in 5 different countries and growing slowly. So what I want to tell you about is a little bit about various contagious diseases. Some of the comments I make, you may make connections to the movie, but it's not really based on that. I'll start with smallpox. We have examples of organisms which we have made extinct intentionally, and we have organisms that we have brought back. We have de-extincted them, as the term goes. And we just heard that my lab has a side project on bringing back the woolly mammoth, but the only organism we've actually brought back is the 1918 flu virus. And you may wonder about the wisdom of doing that. I can assure you that I didn't do it. But it is part of scientific progress to do such things, to prepare us so that we're ready. We can understand how that devastating disease took 30 million lives at a time that the world was even smaller than it is now. But back to smallpox. One of the advisors for this movie, his name is Larry Brilliant. He's a friend of mine. I love his name, Brilliant. I mean, how can you live up to your name? But I can say he does, because between 1973 and 1976, he was part of the World Health Organization effort to get rid of the last few cases of smallpox in the world. And so now it was a devastating disease. It would kill sometimes 30% of the population and leave many others disfigured. And it's now gone. It's extinct. I think there still is a frozen sample somewhere, but it would be very hard to bring back. However, it is on the internet, in case any of you do want to bring it back. Again, I had nothing to do with that, but again, it is in the interest of science, and it's hard to keep these things from becoming public. Which brings me to another case of what many might consider questionable practice, and this is the gain-of-function flu virus. So this was a H5N1 virus. The H refers to hemagglutinin and N refers to neuraminidase, but H5N1, in case you ever wondered. Some scientists, without really checking with anyone, engineered it to have a new function, which is it would spread very more easily, they passaged it through ferrets so it could spread as an aerosol more easily than ever before. It was more pathogenic. And then it didn't really raise any eyebrows until they started to publish it, which is really kind of late in the stage to be asking for permission. But it is now, that is also public information. Another more natural case, back to natural contagion, and this movie is about natural contagion. I hope I'm not ruining anything by saying that. In 2009, there was, it's one of the most recent flu epidemics, H1N1 this time. The same, 1918 was H1N1. And in 2009, it was reconstructed. So one of the beautiful things about epidemiology and kind of the worldwide network we have of epidemiologists and infectious disease experts is they can reconstruct where these diseases come from. And this one presumably came from a mixture of at least 4 influenza viruses, 2 from pigs and bird and human, and they mixed all up together to make something that was ever more hazardous. And we have an increasingly high risk in our current world because we have larger and larger populations of animals in close proximity with humans. There are now 30 billion chickens that we raise for eating, and slightly smaller numbers of pigs. And so the bird and geese, these are all food animals. And so we're in close proximity to these animals, which are kept under less than perfectly sterile conditions, as you all would know if you've spent time on a modern chicken or pig farm, as I have. So that's swine flu, and it's another danger that we have today is we're a well-mixed society. Maybe 1,000 years ago, we would all die within a few meters of where we were born, but today we are constantly churning ourselves and our products around the world through modern transportation. And this means that if we did get just the right contagion, it could spread worldwide quite quickly. You probably all survived the Ebola outbreak. That is another case of crossover from animals to humans. This was a case where it was bats, and these bats were known that they're the only thing that can be infected by Ebola other than humans, and they were known to be roosting in a cotton factory near which had as employees some of the initial patients that got the disease. Now, polio should be an example like smallpox. It should be something that's extinct now. We came very close to eliminating it with a worldwide vaccine campaign could have ended in the late 90s, early 2000s. There was at least some very significant resistance in a few parts of Nigeria. And it's a little hard to disentangle all the causes for this, but one of them was that Pfizer did a clinical trial on a drug called Trovan, which is a treatment for meningitis. And it was criticized for exactly the way that they got informed consent. And indeed 5 children on Trovan died of meningitis during the clinical trial. But the fine print of this is that 6 children died in the control group, which was an accepted drug treatment. Nevertheless, when you have a child that's not responding to the new drug, you're supposed to shift them over onto the old drug, even though in this case more people died under the old drug by a not significant amount. So this caused a general distrust of Western medicine, and it was rumored, and the rumors were never supported by any scientific data, but it was rumored that the polio vaccine contained HIV, that it caused infertility in girls, and it caused cancer. And any one of those would probably be enough to discourage your average parent from giving your child polio vaccines. But the consequence was that it then spread worldwide at the next time that the elders or the members of the community went to Mecca. HIV has crossed over to us from primates. HIV 1, 3 different events, and HIV 2, at least one other event. There are people walking among us who are resistant to HIV and to a variety of other pathogens. They tend to be fairly rare. And I think one of the things that you will see, I'm only giving away the first few minutes now, is that there is going to be some variation in how people react to the contagion in this movie. I was, on the topic of vaccines, there's a lovely character in here by Jude Law plays Alan, and Alan is an opportunist, as you'll see, and I won't say too much more about it, but he represents really the perfect counterpoint to some of the scientific heroes, and one of the reasons that I like this film is because it really is one of those relatively rare science films where scientists, for the most part, do the right thing. There are conflicts. It really is very realistic. There are evidences of conflict of interest, both among Alan, the homeopathy expert, self-proclaimed, and anti-vaccinator. But there are also conflict of interest at the very top of the scientific pyramid. There's examples of self-experimentation. Sometimes that's approved, and very often it is not. And part of I like the little preview reel we had here because one of my other favorite films is The Martian. Matt Damon stars in both of these films, and I probably like many of the people in the audience, I do watch out for scientific accuracy in these, and what was interesting about Contagion is I could find very little. Maybe during the questions, people can point something out to me. In The Martian, there's a big blooper, which is the wind. There is a small wind that will go all around spread dust around the planet, but it's very gentle compared to what they showed. In this one, the closest I could find to an error, and I'm not going to describe it in detail, but there's a mathematical number that they refer to called R, I think they call it R naught or R0, which for flu they say is 1, and we can talk about that in the discussion. I don't think it's actually wrong. I think it's just kind of confusing, at least it was to me. Anyway, without further ado, we can have a longer conversation after the film is over, and I look forward to sharing it with all of you and the questions afterwards too. Thank you.